Hi, everybody. This is Joanne Ewing with Reach the Unlimited, and I am very excited to have John Mullen here. And we're going to talk about his journey to today. Hi, John. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Can you tell everybody a little about yourself?
Wow, where to start? Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go back to the age of 4.
Okay.
Um, when I was 4 years old, my mom died,
Hmm.
and she appeared to me. And as a 4-year-old, I didn't quite know what to do with that. At the time, there was a talk show called Phil Donahue,
Uh-huh.
which I happened to watch as a 4-year-old.
Wow.
And and there was a psychologist on there saying how kids had to create this image of their parents
Hmm.
who had lost their parents in order to say goodbye. And I was like, that's so not true. This wasn't a created image. This was a visit from my mom.
Hmm.
So my whole kind of slant on life was this is what they're telling me, and it isn't necessarily what I believe.
Wow.
Um, so as a 4-year-old, I pretty much kept that visit to myself. I did that for probably about 17 years,
Wow.
not sharing it with anyone and just kind of keeping it to myself. So that kind of takes me to the age of 21-ish. And that's when my life was very interesting. People at that point in time were confiding in me.
Hmm.
People were asking me to heal them. Um, People were confessing things that they had done, including some of my teachers
Wow.
early on in my life. And I'm like, I don't know what I don't know what to do with that.
Hmm.
Um, but that's really kind of cool that they can tell me these things.
Hmm.
Another thing that kind of started happening in my 20s is people were going into altered states around me.
Hmm.
And again, I'm like, that's interesting. Make a note of that.
Hmm.
But when more and more people are coming to you and asking you to heal them, including strangers,
Hmm.
you start to go, I'm not sure what's going on here, but something's happening. Um, I never turned anyone down,
Hmm.
and I didn't quite understand what was going on. I was like, they must see something in me
Hmm.
for whatever reason. Okay. Probably, and again, people are still going into altered states. I'm like, I would sit quietly and just observe it. I wouldn't necessarily say anything. Well, then, oh gosh, probably, and again, I started working in healthcare. I went with a friend for an interview at a nursing home, and I got the job I wasn't even applying for. Um,
Wow.
Again, I don't know what's going on.
Hmm.
Somebody help me here. But so again, in my 20s, let's see, was it my 20s? Yeah. So people started asking me to heal them, and the only thing I knew to do was I would just go into prayer
Hmm.
and lay my hands on them.
Hmm.
It became a regular thing. So I pretty much, in my prayers, I said, obviously something's going on that I'm not sure of. So can you show me numbered handprints on the body so I know where to put my hands?
Hmm.
I'm like, let's work with this. Let's work. I mean, so I would see for a while, I was seeing glowing hands on people where to put my hands.
Wow.
It was like, oh, number 1, okay, there. Number 2, and then, oh, 3. Um, until I became comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Again, probably about 30 years ago, I think it was, a coworker, we were at her house and she said she had a headache.
Mhm.
My hand touched her forehead. She went into trance for the first time and channeled her dead father in Spanish to her mother.
Wow.
As her mother was calling me a witch in Spanish, I was very much, no, 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 I'm not a witch. I'm from Minnesota. I thought that was a good answer.
That was
So
the answer.
it was the best I could do at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So then again, I studied the different, I studied Reiki, became a Reiki master, yada, yada. But for lack of better words, the work I do, again, I'm simply offering the energy that flows through me to the
Mm-hmm.
person. I don't have to know anything about this person. I just know where to put my hands. Um, Another thing that was happening probably early in my 20s is I was led to say things to people. And the first time it happened, I was again living in Minnesota. Yay,
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota. And I was on public transportation, and something told me, and in Minnesota, I mean, for me, when I lived there, you don't go up to a stranger and say something that could be quite offensive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I felt I needed to point something out, and I'm like, I'm not going to go up to a complete stranger and say this. But that, for lack of better words, the urge or the energy kept getting stronger and stronger. And I'm like, so it actually got me off the bus to follow her and to tell her
Oh,
this. And
wow.
I'm like, because again, the way I was brought up, you be very nice to people and you don't do anything to cause anybody any discomfort or
Mm-hmm.
anything other than just be nice to them. Um, she did take offense to what I said,
Mm-hmm.
and I was trying to present it as nicely as possible. It was something about what she got on the bus complaining about someone or something, and I kind of pointed it out to her that she had just done the same thing. Again, none of my business. I'm just minding my own business, but whatever became so powerful, I had to do it. It was so
Mm-hmm.
intense. I found myself also, as years go on, saying things to people. Um, and this is probably 5 or 6 years ago. And again, I'm very mindful about what I say and how it can affect other people. This was probably longer than 5 years ago. And the barista said something to me. She said something like, "Can I get you anything else?" And I was a bit horrified at what came out of my mouth. For quite some time after that, too. I said, the hair off your mother's head, your firstborn child, and something else. Okay, after that came out of my mouth, I was like, what did I just say? Um, Apparently, she had just had, her mother was going through chemo.
Mm-hmm.
She had just had a miscarriage and something else, which was probably the third slap in her face. Again, keeping my, just going, I'm never going to open my mouth. I'm never going to say anything to anybody else again. That just kind of came out. It took me a couple of years to realize that that was probably the perfect thing to say to her, the thing she needed to hear said to her in order for her to open, to let go of some of the grief she was holding.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, it took me a while to realize the things that come out of my mouth, even though I think I'm making a joke,
Mm-hmm.
are really, really quite profound for people. Um, Also, another thing that I've been thinking about the last couple of days is we think we need to have this safe container for people in order to present them the information. So we try, I have my little space at the store, which the door locked with the sound machine so no one hears. But it also, when we talk about people going into altered states,
Mm-hmm.
it happens in public for me.
Mm.
Again, the first time it happened in public, I was like, oh, not here, not here. It's not, other people's energies and blah, blah, blah. What I realize more and more is I really don't have control
Mm-hmm.
over where this happens. Each communication with a person is wherever. So I was in a public place, thought I was minding my own business, drinking my latte, and the woman next to me started going into trance. And I'm like, oh no, not here, not now. And she was fighting it, and I'm like, I can either say something or just pretend this isn't happening. And I just leaned over, put my hand on her, and said, "It's okay, I'm here." And she went out cold into trance. As I looked up behind her, I noticed that whole side of the coffee shop had cleared out because I was starting to like, oh, not here, not here. There was a man coming towards us with his cell phone, and I don't know if he was looking at it or
Mm-hmm.
he knew what was going on, but his phone literally flew out of his hands and went across the room.
Hmm.
He never came back. And I'm starting to, so there was a homeless person who saw this going on, and because we were in the window,
Mm-hmm.
and he was about to knock on the window, and I just shook my head no, and he walked away.
Hmm.
So the little humanness, the little humans that we are, don't necessarily have control as much as we like to think we do. At least that's my opinion. These,
So my question, I think, because that's a lot for somebody to go through without having any kind of understanding or even experience to what's going on or why it's going on or what to do about what's going on. That's a lot for somebody to take. How did you cope with that? What did you do to kind of bring peace to what was happening?
well, I had actually, one of the big helps was when I was actually in a relationship,
Hmm.
and the person who um, I first knew I put into trance, or the energy put her into trance. Um, where I was like wanting to talk about it with everyone and everything. My partner at the time was just like, "Yeah, okay. What do you want for dinner?" Which kind of helped me balance out. I mean, there is that world and there is this world, and you know, um, and for some, what I will say is also for some reason, I've never. I've always been comfortable with it.
Hmm.
Meaning, yeah, I wanted to talk about it, but I'm just for some reason it's like, okay, they went to trance. What are we going to do now? Sometimes it's a matter of lowering them to the floor or getting them to a place where they can continue their journey. So when they go into trance, sometimes they meet up with spirit guides or deceased loved ones. Sometimes they will go through what I call a realignment of energy.
Hmm.
So they'll have seizure-like activity.
Hmm.
Um, sometimes they'll start channeling or whatever for the first time. I just seem to be comfortable with it.
Now, when somebody comes out of that situation, what is their reaction and how do you work with them?
When they come out, I guess it depends on the person and the situation. I will say that no one has ever been surprised
Hmm, really?
or
Wow.
shocked. I did have a woman, and I don't know if you're familiar with the term Kundalini rising.
Mhm.
Uh, I, I at the time was not. Um, so what had happened? So she came in for a session and she was on my table. And, I'm aware of the seizure-like activity. That was fine. Her mouth opened like this. And as I'm working on her, I was observing and I thought I could put my fist in her mouth right now. And I'm like, and I had not seen that before. So I was like to Spirit, hey, are we okay here? Is this a medical emergency or should I call 911? Well, then her mouth opened twice that wide. So I could have put both of my fists in her mouth. And again, I asked Spirit, I'm like, okay, what's going on here? Is this medical or spiritual? Because I could have literally put both my fists in her mouth. And then it was, her tongue started going like a snake. And I'm like, oh, wait a minute, I've heard of this before. But in that particular case, it took, I'm going to say, close to 2 hours to bring her back to this reality.
Wow.
When she came back, she had she said she had an uncontrollable urge to read everything she could about mathematics, Egypt, and UFOs.
Wow.
So she literally went on these massive visits to the bookstore and bought all she could about all the subjects. So that was a little different because she didn't quite know what to do with that.
Patrick has a question, which I'm curious about. It's interesting in what you're talking about that being on the line of alchemy or hypnosis. But for hypnosis, you would have to do something to put somebody under hypnosis, correct?
So what I have, correct. So what I would say is sometimes even texting people, people will go into this altered state. I'm not surprised if anyone, even in your audience, is starting to feel a little different. So sometimes it's just my energy. Sometimes it's me placing my hand on them. And sometimes when I work, I do this whistling, which seems to be like multi-level, which tends to put people into that state also.
So Patrick was saying yes to the hypnotic state. The interesting thing is, does it happen to everyone or only certain people? And have you been able to determine why certain people react and why people don't?
So I'm not everyone. Some people just look at me like, I'm off my rocker or something. But there are certain nationalities. So Asian, Chinese, Chinese women, Filipina. Most Filipino people, just in my presence, will go into an altered state. I've had the experience where I've gone to a Filipino coworker's house and probably several of them have gone into altered states. Some have started channeling. Some, for example, one time I was at my friend's house for a party, which is a large gathering of Filipino people. And as I'm talking to her and her daughter started going into trance. And then the mom's like, no, if you're going to talk to somebody, you talk through me. Okay, so that happened. The younger daughter came up to me and she says, the angel's telling me that my cousin has a portal in her solar plexus and you need to fix it now. And I'm like, what? Who? What? How do, but again, if you have a little girl telling you an angel is telling her this, then you have to go, okay, there's a part of me that knows what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to just access that part of me right now. Again, it's not, if we were having a conversation and you said somebody has a portal in their solar plexus, how would you fix that? I'd be like, I don't know. But in that moment, I just kind of accessed what I needed to know and did it.
Well, I find it interesting. If you go back to when you were a child and your mom passed and you saw your mom, did you have anybody that helped you with understanding it? Because I know you said you didn't talk about it, but how did you cope with that? And do you think that was a trigger to opening you up to other things later?
Definitely, definitely a gift. How did I deal with it?
Mm-hmm.
I I don't even know how to answer that. I mean, at this was so back. Mom died in
Mm-hmm.
1969.
Mm-hmm.
So at the when all of us kids kind of were living at relatives while she was in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
We all kind of then met home back in 69.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, you really kind of didn't talk about death.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't talk about the death experience.
Yeah.
We were all kind of trying to be good kids and not rock the boat too much for my father, who was now taking care of 7 kids alone.
Wow. That's a lot.
So, um, I didn't talk about it probably till I was 20 something.
Wow.
I
Now, did
just
you only see her that first time and not again, or did she come back more during your younger years?
um in various ways, shapes, and forms.
Okay.
Not like a full-fledged
Mm-hmm.
her appearing and me seeing her kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm. That's very
Yeah.
interesting because that would be, I know for me, when I was younger, I would see things moving and, I didn't know I was seeing spirit, but I would see different things and it scared me. Like I didn't know what to do with it because you're young, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. So that must have been really, did any of your other siblings have a similar experience or anything like that?
Um, not in the same way, but I mean, again, it wasn't until later. But
Mm-hmm.
in regards to mom, not that I know of.
Interesting. Okay.
But we have had conversations amongst the siblings, and other siblings have felt or seen
Mm-hmm.
spirits by them.
Now, how does your family accept what you do? Have they accepted that? Your gifts?
I think so. To some extent, um, to some extent, my brother is a Catholic priest,
Oh, interesting. Hmm.
um, and he's still being my older brother. You know, I don't know if he understands it. When I kind of came out to him in that way, I'm like, yeah, I
Hmm.
talk to people and they go into altered states, or I touch people and they go into altered states. Um,
That must be hard for knowing the way that a priest would think. That must be difficult for him to understand.
right.
That's intriguing. Huh. So when you have a situation like this happen, do you have any follow up with someone after that? And do they continue, like if they start channeling, do they continue channeling after? Is that just a one time thing or what happens that way?
I guess it depends on the person. So, for example, the woman, the coworker,
Mhm.
um, we kind of worked with it for a while,
Mhm.
and then on some level, it kind of scared her.
Mm.
Um, I did run into her a couple, well, I don't know how many years after the fact. And again, as I say, words come out of my mouth. She
Mhm.
kind of said, "Well, whatever you do, don't touch me," because and I said, I don't have to touch you anymore. I just have to look in your eyes.
Mm.
So where that came from, I don't know. I did see her a couple of times since then,
Mhm.
and she lowered her eyes and told me to look in the opposite direction so we could talk. So,
Wow. So not everybody receives this in a very safe, kind manner, I would guess.
um, I think it all depends. I think regardless, I mean, it's not about a continuing thing. It could be just an opening. I'm not, you know, I'm not necessarily looking for this ongoing
Mhm.
relationship with people. A couple of people have kind of helped doing readings and things like that, teaching them how
Mm.
to do that.
Mhm.
But I guess as I get older, I'm just kind of for whatever time I have with that person. I don't have to take them from point A to point Z, or
Mhm.
and if they want to come back, years later, that's fine. I'm not, you know,
So going back to your 20s, you're starting this process. That must have also been pretty scary though to not have any training, understanding. Did you have anybody that you had watched or anybody that you had known about to even make this like
no. Actually, probably in my, I'm going to say probably mid 20s.
Mhm.
I actually had what I would call an awakening or an opening or things like that. And that was pretty, for lack of better words, intense.
Mhm.
Um, where, um, one day I was walking home from work and I couldn't see for about 15 minutes.
Oh, that's scary.
Um, I was walking again, same week, I was walking down the street and everything became alive. Everything.
Hmm.
And was talking, the houses started breathing and the things like that. And I'm like, and I'm, trying to rationalize this. And at the time I was doing home care and I'm like, my patient couldn't have slipped me anything because he was bedbound.
Mm.
My all the food and liquids I had while I was there, I brought from home. Nobody, you try analyzing it. Then there was I don't, I don't even know how to explain it. I was kind of on the floor in the bedroom, kind of shaking because I was seeing, for lack of better words, multidimensionally,
Mhm.
and I was trying to figure out what I was seeing. And every time I tried to
Mhm.
figure out what I was seeing, this big bolt of blue light would come and knock me in the third eye.
Hmm.
And so I did that for about, I think it was about a couple hours until I stopped trying to figure it out.
Mhm.
And I just went with it.
So, I guess when you hear something like that, you have to think that must be really scary to have something like that to happen and not understand what's
Okay.
happening.
Okay. So I forgot this part. So what had happened, the reason why I'm bringing this up is at the time we were involved with a group in Sacramento, my
Mhm.
partner and I. And I, at the time, pretty much thought I could tell everybody everything.
Mhm.
Anyone who asks me what's up, I'll tell them. You know, um, there was the person who led the group, which was, a mystery school class, so readings that had been channeled from the masters.
Mhm.
Um, I would tell them. So one day he pulled me aside and kind of said, "John, I believe what you're saying, but you need to be a little aware of who you're telling this to, because your family could have you locked up for this. Then I'm like, okay. I also had a good friend who is actually a scientist. And she came to me and she said, I believe everything you're saying, even though it's so far beyond me,
Mm-hmm.
I believe what you're saying. Um, I didn't question my sanity.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I questioned my sanity at all, but it was, oh, I need to kind of be aware of who I'm telling what to.
Which I was going to come to, because people that are listening to this, we don't want to just go up to people and say anything to. I mean, we have to be, because in my world, it's do no harm. So you don't want to go to somebody and scare them or something like that. But it sounds like the people that have come across your path were people that were there for your
Mm-hmm.
learning, for your healing, for whatever it is that you were you able to take some kind of note or some kind of overview of, was there a pattern there? Was there an overall kind of theme to the type of people that you were in, besides the race, to whatever they were either going to experience or needing to heal from or change?
I don't think so. I will say, again, me being me, um, there was somebody who crossed my path,
Mhm,
a woman who rode public transportation,
mhm,
and I was feeling this urge to
mhm,
touch her third eye.
mhm,
I mean, really strongly. And I was trying. This was several years ago, in my own way, trying to figure out, how do I approach this? Do I walk up to this person and say, you know, I really feel I need to touch your forehead, and if I do, you might fall on the ground and go into trance. Um, I kept like struggling, and people were like, "Well, just bump into her," and I'm like, "I'm not going to bump into someone and put them into trance." Um, and I kept seeing her, I kept seeing her, I kept seeing her, and then I didn't see her, and I finally said, "Okay, God, Source, Divine, Universe, I'm ready." Within 5 minutes, she was standing in front of me, and I'm like, "Oh no, I really can't do this. I'm so sorry. I said I could. I said I would, but I can't. I can't hand her a business card. I'm not." So I didn't. So again,
uh,
it's not like I'm 100%. Okay, what do I say to this person? What do we say to that person? Um,
mhm,
and sometimes too, we have a lot of homeless people and a lot of people with mental health issues um, here in San Francisco, and um, sometimes I'll hear the voice, for lack of better words, tell me to do something like, before you get off the bus, you need to hold this person's hand. And I very, very strongly heard that. And I'm kind of like, I don't know how this is going to work. Okay, check. I'm not in danger. I could be, but I'm not. And I'll do it. So
mhm,
I did it. But when I got off the train, I'm again saying, I know, I just did that. I don't want to make a habit of doing this.
mhm.
And again, whether that's going to be the case or not, I just felt I had to put my 2 cents in. You know.
Well, I
And
guess it shows too that we have free will. We are our own person, so if we're uncomfortable.
I believe we have free will, but at least for me,
Mhm,
there is a point of surrender.
mhm,
There is a point where, whether it was my guide or my higher self or, Jesus Christ, there's a point of surrender. And there's a point of, for me, there's a point of surrender, there's a point of service, where whatever situation is beyond John.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, that's easy to say, right? I mean, we all know in mediumship we have to surrender. We don't have to, but it helps to surrender to
Right.
connect with spirit. And for some people, it's really easy to surrender, and some people it's really difficult to surrender. So, how do you go about, or what did you do to get to that point? Because what you're doing is going above and beyond. When I do mediumship, I have someone sitting in front of me that came to see me, that
Mm-hmm.
came to sit in front of me, where you're interacting with people, just people out there. How did that work for you to come to that point of realizing that surrendering was the key?
Well, again, it's kind of like even when that person next to me in the coffee shop had gone into trance, it's kind of realizing, as much as I'd like to think I'm calling the shots,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a conduit. I really am. You know, and I get reminded of that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of how I look at my life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You know, this is how I'm dealing with this package in
Mm-hmm.
this point in time. And I think I'm becoming more okay with that.
Well, I like what you said, because surrendering is the opposite of being in control. So being acknowledging the fact that we think that we're in control, when a lot of times we don't even realize how much we are being inspired by
Right.
the other side. And we know that based on things that you just express, right? Things that we say that we have no idea why we're saying it, and somebody else looks at you like, how would you know that, or how do you know that? Which shows that we are often inspired when it's pertinent to somebody to help them for whatever reason, which seems like that's what you work with,
Mm-hmm.
are coming across people that need the type of help that you can give them, which a lot of people wouldn't ever do, would not feel safe to be able to react or act in that way.
And so I also work in a crystal shop doing retail.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and one of the biggies right now, and again, as people are coming in, um, I get to spend time with them, even though it could be like a quick 5 minute, um, but acknowledging people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people want all these things. And my response is, well, if your heart is not open, how can we allow this to be so?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people right now are really, um, from my point of view, um, really, especially in this day and age, really trying hard to hold on to what they've placed in their heart.
Talk about that a little more. What do you
So
exactly think?
all the grief, frustration, anxiety, depression, all the angst, all the things that they've allowed
Mm-hmm.
others to impose upon themselves. Um, and we do a little crystal healing, if you want to say, in that time,
Mm-hmm.
where I get to speak directly to them
Mm-hmm.
and acknowledge what's in their heart, what I see in their heart, what I feel in their heart. And then of course, we kind of amp it up, bring the energy through their entire being. So they're not only is that energy moving through them, they are radiating that open heart energy. And then we bring in the angelic realm.
Mm-hmm.
So they are not feeling so vulnerable. But it's really touching. It's really touching to see, you know, people kind of take that deep breath and open their hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Again, is it this long, worn out process? No. A lot of people have a lot of things that they just need to hear another person acknowledge.
Mhm. There is a lot of pain that goes on, and we don't let go of that unless you're taught how to let go of that. And I don't know, even after you're taught how to let go of that, you actually do too. I mean, I think there's degrees, right, to how much
But
we're
but also,
able to.
it sometimes helps when they're holding a crystal that is
Yeah,
for that. But
right, right.
a lot of people, especially have spent their whole lives bearing things in their heart, and to have that acknowledged, and to
Mm,
have that, you know, have someone say, right now you're being surrounded and supported by the angelic realm to open up your heart, magnified and amplified to the fullest, letting go of the grief, frustration, anxiety, depression,
mm.
all the angst you placed in your heart, um, are pretty powerful words
Yeah,
for a lot of
absolutely.
people.
Now, you made a good statement, though. Well, you've made a lot of them, but particularly, I'm going to focus in on this one about there's crystals that will help to open the heart. Because I feel like there's a lot of people right now that are heavy hearted. There's a lot going on in our world, there's a lot going on in people's lives. If you talk to people, then you hear constantly how people are feeling the stress, they're feeling the pressure of what's happening in society. What would be the crystals that you were talking about to help open up that
It
heart
is called
space?
Cobalto calcite.
Mm,
It's from South Africa.
mhm.
Uh, as far as I know, there's two mines. One is actually flooded, so there is no more.
Wow.
It's pink. It's it's again, it's the crystal I relate most to. Um, it's very powerful. Um, so powerful, in fact, that some people will not. I'll have it sitting on the counter and I'll offer to share it with them, and they're like, "No, I'll come back. I'll come back in about 3 months."
Wow.
Um, we'll have couples where one is crying and laughing and holding on to the Cabalto, and the partner will be like, and they all pretty much do the same thing. No, I'm good, and they push it away. Again, it's not for me to say, oh, that's because you don't want to open up your heart, you know, but everyone in their own timing. But I'm finding um, that in people's thoughts and intentions, prayers, or whatever, that the majority of people have already asked for that heart opening. A lot of people will be like, how did you know? How
Mhm.
did you know that I just prayed for this today? You know, um,
So, do you think that's something that's happening around the world and that's why we're all becoming more aware of it? Or do you think that's happening with just certain people? What does that mean?
my belief, again, uh, I think it's throughout the world. I
Hmm.
think it's throughout the world, but I'm getting a big taste of it here in San Francisco.
Hmm.
Um, yeah.
So, let's say that, like, the people that are like, no, 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 not ready, not going to happen right now. Is there baby steps that you can take or other things that you can take to start that process?
Well, I think for me, um, in those cases, I'm okay with that. I mean, everyone in their own. But if you're in a room full of people that are opening up their heart, that's probably a good invitation for you to open up your heart. If your partner is like, I'm all for this, I want to get this and bring it into the house,
Hmm.
then, maybe maybe that might have some effect on you if your partner's opening up their heart and they're, you know, being an example to you.
From my experience of
Yes.
partnerships like that, I don't see that happening. Didn't work for me anyway, I'm going to say. I wanted to open my heart, partner did not. I feel like it has to do with their timing too, like we talked about earlier, the timing of somebody's soul's progression, because
So
there's some people that won't do it.
that can be a conversation for when we get off the air.
Hmm.
But yeah, I could say a few things to you about that. It's all good.
Yeah, it is all good because it all happens for the right reason. But I feel like I know for me, when I first started my journey, I was against all of this stuff. You would not have caught me doing any of this. And I was in Hawaii and I came across this beautiful amethyst that just sung to me. And that was my first step into, okay, there's something more to this, and the energies are really there and can. The amethyst really helped to soften me more than anything else. But when it came to my partner, it was like, not happening.
I mean, I was doing energy work long before crystals,
Mm-hmm.
before the crystal part, and it was actually the Cabalto that got me
Mm-hmm.
rethinking things.
Interesting.
Um,
How'd you come
because
across it? What was your first step into that?
into
To,
it
to
was
find that Balto.
it was the Cabalto calcite. I was waiting for a client in the
Mm-hmm.
store, and something said, "Hey, go pick up that
Ah.
Cabalto calcite and share it with somebody."
Mm-hmm.
And it was like, again, okay,
Mm-hmm.
sure, I'm good with that. So I
Mm-hmm.
picked it up, handed it to her, and she immediately started sobbing.
Oh, wow.
Now people are like, "Oh my God, you're made." No, it's another interesting thing about people opening up their hearts and crying is a lot of people will apologize.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, you don't need to apologize. I consider it an honor. Um, and I've had almost 20 years of hospice experience. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm good with crying. You can cry all you want to. As a matter of fact, I brought this box of Kleenex today just because of that, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but my coworkers will kind of roll their eyes, and it's like, John, how many people did you make cry today? It's
uh,
it's kind of an honor. I mean, I'm not going around, ripping off band-aids and making and poking people with sticks, but to be in that space where someone is opening up their heart is amazing.
I want to say thank you to Periette. She just put in the chat the cultivate calcite. Sorry, didn't say it right. So thank you for doing that, Periette. For anybody who is curious to what John is actually speaking about, um, that is really interesting. Sorry, I got distracted. So Jacqueline, I love what you said. She says that she's a graveyard or buried of trauma. So, what would be good for someone who has that kind of trauma that they're dealing with to kind of release and let go? Would that do the same thing?
Yes, but um, I would also bring in celestite. There's a combo that I work with:
Oh, Celeste.
cobalto calcite,
Hmm.
Herkimer diamond,
Oh,
and
yeah.
celestite. So
Hmm.
the cobalto calcite is all about opening up the heart.
Hmm.
The Herkimer diamond will magnify and amplify
Hmm.
so that most people will actually, even people who say, "Oh, I don't feel anything," they'll
Mm.
definitely feel it. It's a quartz, but it's unlike any other quartz. I bring in the celestite,
Hmm.
which is all about inner peace. It's all about the angelic realm and what it feels like. In if you're going to do the combo,
Hmm.
it actually you feel the energy surrounding you, drawing in closer, like a big warm hug.
Hmm.
And then you're like, because a lot of people in their grief, in their heaviness of their heart, feel like they're all alone.
Hmm.
This is kind of oh my gosh, I'm not alone. There's actually, I can feel the energy around me, if you want to call it a band of angels or the angelic realm, and I can actually feel that.
Hmm. The Herkimer actually is my one of my favorite. It was my second stone that I went towards. I just really needed to bust everything open really loud and clear. So I went to the Herkimer. Now,
Mhm.
somebody had told me that they're not mining for Herkimer anymore. Is that really true?
Not that I'm aware of.
That's what I thought. I thought that person was not telling me the truth, but since you know, I would ask.
You know, and another thing is
Yeah.
too with crystals and gems, some of the stories you hear aren't, you know, we heard there's only two mines,
Mm-hmm.
and that one is flooded, um, the one in Morocco.
Mm-hmm.
But that could have been a tale from a
Mm-hmm.
cobalto calcite vendor at one
Mm-hmm.
of the shows.
Exactly.
So everything's a little iffy.
Yep.
I tend to believe that the mind is flooded because I think my coworker looked it up.
Mm.
Um, but cobalto calcite is amazing. Another one, which I recommend to everyone, is called this. It's called celestite. I'm sorry, selenite.
So nice.
Selenite is what I would say is a lot of people buy the black stones, the tourmaline, the obsidian, to repel negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and again, this is my belief, so you can believe whatever, but my belief is if you are actually buying those things to repel, then you're actually inviting the opportunity to have more play with protection and deflection.
Interesting.
If you use something like this, which is called selenite,
Mm-hmm.
selenite is used to clear the energy of crystals.
Mm-hmm.
They say it doesn't need to be cleansed. I would say it does need to be cleansed.
Interesting.
Realtors will put it in houses that haven't sold.
Mm-hmm.
And I use it on people.
Mm-hmm.
And what it actually does is bring, just by holding it and breathing in, it brings you into alignment. It brings you into a state of connection with the divine, being centered, being balanced, being grounded. It's
Mm-hmm.
in this, it's with the selenite where it isn't about protection and deflecting. It's about I am connected to source. I can sit back and watch these situations occur, but I'm not caught up in the emotion of it
Mm.
because I am connected, I am centered.
Mm-hmm.
So you can have someone screaming at you. I carry a piece in my pocket all the time. I carry it in my bag.
Mm-hmm.
Um, People in my life who have had anxiety attacks, I've placed a necklace over them, and they're instantly like they kind of knocks them out of that way of thinking instantly.
Mm-hmm.
So selenite again. How can you create? How can you bring forth? How can you create that job or that relationship
Mm-hmm.
if you're not aligned to do it?
How would rose quartz go with that?
So what I say is, rose quartz is very soft,
Mm-hmm.
very compassionate, very tender,
Mm-hmm.
very much like take your time, be nicer to yourself, allow yourself to receive from others. And in comparison to the cobalto calcite, I would say the cobalto calcite is you're holding me, you've got a heart, open it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's no, it just is. Um, and I think there's a lot of people wanting to do that right now. A lot of people wanting to, and they're kind of like, because it's actually like they're carrying a physical weight around
Mm-hmm.
on them. These situations at the store, be they, you know, whether they're just 5 minutes, I point out to them just the expansiveness in their upper chest or in their stomach where they held all these emotions. It's quite remarkable.
What would you say if somebody was starting out in this more awakening state? What would be the maybe cluster, few stones or crystals that would help them in that awakening process in a gentle way?
So again, selenite.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, it all depends because we all have varying degrees of what gentle is. Um, and I absolutely think rose quartz has its place, but I'm probably one of the many that are like, you've got a heart, open it.
Okay.
Um, what I would also say to people in this whole realm of our conversation is we need to realize that we are created by source.
Mm-hmm.
We are, so there's nothing of us or in us that is not of source.
Mm-hmm.
So to realize our self-worth,
Mm-hmm.
to actually be kinder and gentler to ourselves and realize we're so much more, you know, and stop comparing ourselves to others.
Yeah.
You know, I have some amazing mediumship friends, and I'm just like, oh, I wish I could do that. Well, on the same hand, they're looking at me saying, oh, I wish I could,
Mm-hmm.
stop comparing yourself. It
Mm-hmm.
isn't a contest. We
That's
are each our own individual, we're each one of us is an individual expression of God.
mm-hmm.
And since we are it, we get to, we get to have more say in how that expression plays out.
Mm-hmm.
And that is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That is really cool. We need to stop going, oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. What is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to express, and express it? Another thing is realizing, and I've kind of learned this gradually through my saying things to people, which um, even by doing many sessions with people,
Mm-hmm.
I can be with you in that moment. I'm not the whole cup of tea. I'm not the whole cup of tea. And it's not because again, some people will come and see me and I'll tell them the same thing over and over. You know, you don't have to get what I say. You know, I will feel what I need. I will, say what I feel I need to say to you,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not responsible.
Mm-hmm.
I can say it as loving as kind as possible, which I've been in situations where someone has said to me, I did I agreed to do psychic readings for a group of what were they? Governmental high powered lawyers, like way
Wow.
up. And I said something to someone, and she said, "How dare you? Don't you know who I am?" And it was kind of funny because she was serious, and I said, "No, I really don't. And if I did, I would tell you the same thing." I said, "It's my job to say it as loving and as kindly as possible, but whether you get it or not, it's not up to me."
Right.
I would have told the Queen of England the same thing, if I felt the need to, but I
I agree. The messages that come are the ones that we can understand and hear. We may not like to hear it, or we may not want to hear it now, but it is something that we are receiving for a reason.
or
That's
sometimes the message is not at all what we thought we were.
exact. Well, that happens quite often as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Not what we were looking for, something different. I get that a lot with people, and I have to have compassion for them because what they want to hear, we all have things we want to hear, and that's what they want to hear. And then when you tell them something they don't like it. And it's hard to get them to understand that it's what you're in need of right now. And they just don't like that. It's very difficult with people sometimes. I've
That's where
experienced
that's where the selenite comes in.
exactly. I was going to say selenite also is good for communication. It's a good communication stone as well. So, what would you say your golden nugget you would like to leave people with?
again, I think it's stop beating yourself up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, speak your truth.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what gets us into trouble is when we, again, especially we should realize this at this point in life, um, to realize that we do come from our heart when we speak.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in this point in time, people aren't necessarily going to get it, understand it,
Mm-hmm.
or act accordingly. Um, and that I think is where the real lesson is.
Right. It is.
Um, again, being aligned and balanced, and how am I going to respond to that? You
Mm-hmm.
know, am I responsible for whether or not the person opens up their heart? No.
Mm-hmm.
I am only the messenger, and however they choose to deal with it is their choice.
That is very wise words of wisdom for sure. Because we can't control. We have to just deliver, and that's it. Leave it at that. Not
And
internalize.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I am
I love
not responsible for your life,
it.
and you're not for mine, you know.
Exactly.
Um, but again, even just by working in retail, you get
Mm-hmm.
so many different personalities and energies to work your way through.
Yes, you do, I'm sure. Actually, I worked with service industry, so I get that. I want everybody to know that this is John's first time of doing an interview, and you did an absolutely beautiful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
And it was a pleasure speaking with you, and I hope you all enjoy John. John, do you want to tell anybody how to get a hold of you, or do you?
So I guess the best way to get a hold of me would be through my Facebook page,
Okay.
John Mullen, JohnMullin, Intuitive Energy. And you can find me, you can message me.
We didn't even talk about intuitive energies. We didn't talk, well, we talked about energies, but not intuitive energies, I guess. Not in the way that I think we were going to go, but that's okay. This was a great conversation. I loved it. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. It was fun.
And if you guys have any questions or comments, please put that in the chat and we will get back to you. I will get back to you on that. And I want everybody to have a good night. And thank you so very much, John, for being here. I appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you all. Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.